Hey guys, I want to do something unusual today and I want to talk about trying to get rich. I want to talk about people that want to retire rich and what that's going to take based on your age. And now, before I start this, obviously, rich is relative. So, this isn't even rich in the grand scheme of things whatsoever, but this is kind of what I find I'll see and I'll say, you know what? You're basically unbreakable if you have this amount of money, unless you're somebody that, is taking huge risks or, giving your kids way too much money or buying like really expensive things in retirement or whatever, then you're probably going to need more money than this. But if you're like a normal senior citizen that's 65 years old and you have your house paid off, I think kind of around 1.5 million is the magic number. Obviously, it's going to be less if you don't spend a lot of money, you have a defined benefit pension plan, things like that. It's easier for couples like we talk about all the time because now there's, two supports from CPP and OAS coming in. But I think that 1.5 is a pretty great number to strive for because usually when I see them, I'll be like, listen, you're absolutely unbreakable. Don't worry about it. Like, you can do a lot of things. You've usually bought what you already wanted. And that doesn't mean that you need to be scared about the idea that you're not going to be able to achieve this, because this is not something that is easy to achieve, and it is not what is needed to actually retire. So just for example's sake, Caitlin and I were just talking about a file where a guy has about 250,000. Usually that would be tough to retire on, except in his case, he wants to spend $1,200 a month. Well, okay, then that's going to be pretty simple to achieve because CPP and OAS is going to pay him $2,000, so he doesn't even need any of his money. Now he's got $250,000 too much. So, anyway, so you got to know your number, what you're striving for, and I'll break down what a $1.5 million retirement at 65 might look like. Needless to say, obviously, if you're 55 and you want to retire with 1.5 million, it's going to be a heck of a lot more difficult. You've got to fund 10 years before you're receiving government benefits. Your money's got to last like 40 years potentially. It's a lot harder. So the later you wait, the easier it is, of course. All right, so I'm going to look at a 20, 30, 40, and 50-year-old and how much they're going to need to save to achieve this retirement. But the first thing I need to do is look at what $1.5 million would, potentially be in, that many years based on inflation. What's the purchasing power of 1.5 in, 45 years for a 20-year-old? So in that case, the 20-year-old is going to need probably about 3.8 million in order for them to achieve this. The 30-year-old, 3.1 million. The 40-year-old, 2.5 million, and the 50-year-old, $2 million, which you'll see if you're starting at 50 and trying to have this aggressive of a retirement, then you better make a lot of money. So it's always, how much can you save and start early and invest early? That's it. So what are the monthly savings you got to be based on these ages, assuming a 6.5% rate of return? And after I'm done going through these numbers, I'm going to talk about three fairly simple ways to actually increase this number. Two of them are guaranteed to increase it. One of them is speculative. All right, so the 20-year-old needs to save $1,177 per month or $14,000 a year, roughly, in order to get to this $3.8 million number at 65. The 30-year-old needs to save $1,937 or $23,000 per year. The 40-year-old, $3,339, which is about $40,000 a year. and the 50-year-old needs to save $6,589 per month, or $79,000 per year to achieve this goal of $2 million at retirement. Obviously, very difficult. Like I said, get yourself in a relationship. It's going to make it easier. You only have to save half as much to get to this number. You guys can both save that amount. You got less bills. Even find somebody you don't even like if you want to retire rich. So that, I guess, we can add to the list of how to make this easier. Another one that I always like is like, okay, so you're saving this monthly and you started at, 20 and you're saving $1,200 a month. Unbelievable. I mean, you're going to be loaded, right? Like, this is unbelievable if you can do that. But one thing that you can do to increase it is say, I got a raise and I'm going to get inflationary raises over the course of my life. So when that happens, instead of just spending all the rest, you're going to take that proportion and just increase your monthly payments by that. So like, 2% a year really starts to add up. So that's an easy way to do it, especially if you have a really long time. The next way to do it is, even easier and better, is you have to invest less money because you use our Canadian tax system to your advantage. So what I'm going to talk about, as I always talk about, is my favorite retirement savings strategy for young people that are employees, which is invest money into your RSP, take the refund and put it into your TFSA or back into your RSP, and then you actually get to double up your refund the next year. It doesn't work like as well after the first year, but still works. But then you're probably going to have too big of an RSP, so that's why I like to do the mix between the RSP and the TFSA. So just in that example, for that 20-year-old, let's say they're in a 40% tax bracket, instead of having to save $14,000 a year or $1,177 a month, they can just save $10,000 a year into their RSP. They're going to get a $4,000 refund. They put that into their TFSA. It's only $10,000 a year out of pocket rather than 14. And then lastly is, and you see influencers online all the time talking about 10, 11% returns, whatever. You can try to get higher than 6.5% rates of return. And there are things that you can do to, make this probably achievable. Doesn't mean that it's guaranteed, but the more you can make over the long term, the compound interest is just crazy. Like the rule of 72, if you make 10%, it only takes you 7.2 years to double your money. If you make 7%, it takes you 10 years. And once that starts doubling, once you see that compound, it's unbelievable. So the main way to be able to do this is to take more risk. And by that, I don't mean go in and speculate on stocks and whatever. This works for some people sometimes, and you're like, I wish I did that. I wish I did that too. I wish I bought Apple with every paycheck I had when I was 20 years old. I'd be absolutely loaded. I wish I put $1,000 into Bitcoin 10 years ago. I'd be absolutely loaded. I didn't do those things, but you can choose to take more equities in your portfolio. So when you get your risk level and it's like, I'm a moderate or balanced investor, that just means you probably have about 60% stocks in your portfolio and 40% bonds. And those 40% bonds aren't really supposed to get you that 6.5% growth. What they're supposed to do is protect the downside for when the stock market corrects itself. It always does. But if you look at the long-term lines of these things every single time, especially if you're 20 or 30, and even 40 in this case, because it's usually like 15 years is like the kind of like worst case scenario, it back looking historically, which isn't, necessarily an indicator of what will happen, is that stocks beat everything else over 15-year periods every single time. The US has obviously done better. They love capitalism. They love businesses making money. They love shareholder value more than a lot of other countries. This is why you see go in the S&P 500 and you're going to get 10% rates of return, and it's easy as that. Well, I mean, that's a little less diverse, but that is riskier, right? So the more risk you take, the better chances you are, unless you get up into that like super high level risk. Just investing in a huge basket of companies over the long term is not risky, because companies are made to make money. If they don't, they go out of business. Another company replaces it, and now you own a small bit of that company in your portfolio. And then, as like beating a dead horse, we need a graphic of a beating of a dead horse. If I say something like 15 times a year or whatever, is reduce your fees, right? So like those Quest Trade commercials or whatever I'm talking about, like all the time, like if you're paying 2.5% compared to paying like 0.5% or 1%, then you're potentially reducing your rate of return by 1.5% every single year. It doesn't work exactly like that, but the long-term averages of lowering your fees in the same rough basket of investments should work in your favor almost every single time, especially over the long term. So you do that, hopefully it's going to make it easier. Like I said, you do not need $1.5 million to retire. We've done tons of retirement plans for people with a hell of a lot less than that, who are living a very comfortable life. I'm just saying that's kind of like your cushion where basically I never have to worry about anything. Your plan is too easy. Basically, just go and enjoy your life and don't worry about a single thing at any point in time. Timing CPP and OAS doesn't really matter. Doing a meltdown or whatever is a personal choice. It's like, do this because you want it, gift some money, go buy that car. You want a Porsche or whatever in your like late life crisis, sure. No, you can't buy a yacht. You're probably going to make money in retirement in that case. So anyway, thanks for watching. We'll see you guys soon. Hope you like and subscribe.